former teens who went to wilderness camps, therapeutic boarding schools and other troubled teen programs. What were your experiences? I was definitely a troubled teen. A lot of running away, drugs, alcohol, etc. My parents sent me to a lawn school in Maine. When I arrived I was strip searched and showered by a girl, not staff. It was pretty hellish. Abuse was the norm. It was a couple hundred kids and a very small handful of staff. Essentially if you won privileges you got to run things. Until you messed up and had to begging the status climb all over again. We weren't allowed to make friends. That was called a contract and other kids would report you. Our days were spent watching each other, waiting for a chance to tell on someone, because that helped elevate your status. If you mess up enough you get shot down. Sometimes that meant a costume meant to provoke ridicule, sometimes being put in the corner. Literally, unable to speak, not allowed to move around. Guarded for however long by another kid. If the corner person wasn't cooperative then both got in trouble. There was also the boxing ring. One house or multi-house general meetings where you'd stand while everyone rushed you, screaming as loud as they could about what a terrible person you are. I can't type anymore tonight because I'll have bad dreams. Almost 40 years later I still see certain faces. If anyone is actually interested I can add more tomorrow without touchpad typus lol. My father lost custody of me for domestic violence and I got scooped up by CPS and put into the group home system. He got custody back a couple of months later and I ended up running away. They sent me to a place called Vision Quest, which was a place with troublemakers, but not that bad. The thing that was bad was that there wasn't any food. I was eating little single serving cups of cream cheese. Ended up running from there with another dude, and when we got picked up I ended up in a residential treatment facility, mostly because they didn't know what to do with me, since I didn't earn any jail time along the way. That place was full of mostly Native American kids. Some of them were from rival gangs. The violence was pretty bad. Midnight beatdowns, gang fights, racial violence, sexual abuse, etc. The people running it really seemed to mean well and were actually pretty fair about seeing what really happened vs everyone gets punished no matter what. Despite what the other kids were like, it was the first time anyone really told me that it was my family that was wrong and to just focus on the program and work towards an independent living program, which I did. I went to a wilderness program then a residential treatment center. In the end, it was good for what was going on in my life, but it was a roller coaster. Raging out at being sent away one moment, to being awed by nature in the next in the wilderness program, playing silly games with similar aged teens to feeling trapped behind tall metal gates, surrounded by large staff at the residential treatment center. I learned a lot, I healed, I had some wild moments, and wished I had kept in touch with other people who were in my group. I wonder what they are doing now. Did they make it? There were pictures on the wall of the art room of people who had graduated, and a therapist was having a heart-to-heart with us, told the group to look up, then told us a good percentage of those people were dead. They relapsed, they got back with abusers, they killed themselves. It hit me in the gut. Life's hard after treatment. You've been taught a lot, then you are thrown back into your old life and you have to use the skills for real. It's never as simple as the books explain it. Second Nature and Vista in case any fellow alums are on Reddit. I got sent to Second Nature as well as Vista Treatment Center in 2009. Along with Aspen and Red Cliff Ascent, both in Utah. I got goosebumps when I read your comment. Honestly, I learned a lot while I was there, but mostly due to having to learn how to cope with the reality of being held against my will for months on end. During my time at Vista I was subjected to forms of social isolation that I think should be illegal. I tried to run and was immediately put on clothes and row for the remainder of the 4 months that I spent there. I was only allowed to wear scrubs and had a staff member at arm's length away from me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Yes, even while sleeping, clothes. I could also not talk to any of my peers, row, and if they ever directed so much as a word to me, they would automatically lose all their privileges and drop down to row themselves. I spent months without any normal social interaction with any of my peers. It's strange what happens to a person when they are kept from engaging with others. I can honestly say that it's one of the most difficult experiences I've had to go through, especially considering that I was a teenager at the time. Mind you, I was only a run risk. I never posed a threat to myself or others. And what got me into these programs was being a pothead, not doing hard drugs, or being in trouble with the law. I understand that some people are in dire need of therapeutic intervention, but I don't think it's a coincidence that we ended up in the same programs. The fact is that these institutions are for-profit business that have an invested economic interest in keeping adolescents in the treatment cycle for as long as possible, whether they truly need it or not. I did Outward Bound when I was 18. The group consisted of about 14 of us, all between the ages of 16 and 20. One girl was sent by her parents, I assume to straighten her up. On the first night we camped, she fled. She took a map, a compass, and I think some matches, and was gone. When we woke up, we were told later she had made it to a road and hitchhiked to somewhere. I think she eventually made it home. If there are camps specifically for kids in trouble, her parents should have sent her to one of those. Edit. After reading the other stories, I think I see why her parents didn't send her to a place for trouble kids. JFC. My friend Danielle was sent to the Allen school back in the late 90s/early 2000s. She had fallen in with a bad crowd in school and her boyfriend had gotten her into drugs. She was such a sweet girl with so many insecurities. She was creative and sensitive, and she really needed help to heal from the trauma she had already experienced in her life. She was moved to an alternative school in 10th grade or so, and that didn't work out. I truly believe her mom thought she was doing the right thing by sending her to Allen, but it turns out that place was a horribly abusive hellhole. Danielle told me kids were made to sit in a circle around someone and call them a whore, tell them they were worthless, they didn't deserve to live, completely break them down. She said there was physical and mental abuse like crazy from fellow students and the staff. Danielle eventually left, but that place didn't heal her. It made her pain worse and worse. She died of a heroin overdose in 2004. Allen was shut down in 2011 after many years of allegations of abuse. I did the Northwest Youth Conservation Corps. It is not exactly a troubled teens program, but I was put in an interesting situation. I joined because it seemed like a fun way to spend a summer outdoors, doing some hard but worthwhile work in the wilderness, and make some money to buy a home-built PC gaming rig. I knew another person joining for the 6 weeks and it just seemed like a normal teenager summer thing. For the most part it was. Usually the crews are 5 guys and 5 girls. They did not have enough girls, so I got put on the all guys crew. The all guys crew had what seemed like mostly troubled kids and a few outright dangerous kids. We also got all the hardest projects and worked our asses off. Still loved every minute of it and reflect upon it fondly. If you are ever walking the trail along the coast to Cannon Beach in Oregon, I helped build some of it. Got the shit repeatedly beat out of me at a Mormon boarding school in Provo, Utah. Almost everyone there was kept on incredibly high doses of antipsychotics to keep us in line, and so we couldn't fight back. When we did there was getting beat, strapped to a table, injected with drugs like Haldol and then tossed naked into a concrete cell. School was a joke there, and didn't actually bother to teach anyone anything. And the therapists, well, what they and the other employees deserve probably isn't allowed to be said on here. Those that have been know what I'm talking about. Basically, the whole experience was rather quite unpleasant. In 08, after repeat trips to various mental hospitals in the Northeast after a severe depressive episode, I was woken up in the middle of the night by 2 guys who told me I was going on a trip. I should add that at this point in my life I had been arrested repeatedly for things like assault, vandalism, disorderly conduct, affray, truancy and other troubled kid behavior. Well, I put up a fight and was promptly put in cuffs and walked out of my house by these 2 guys and my father. An hour later I was on an airplane to Salt Lake City to a residential treatment center/evaluation facility run by Mormons. Intake felt like jail. I was asked to strip naked in a cold shower room. It's February, and told to cover myself in lice shampoo and squat and cough. I had to sit there for 10 minutes for the shampoo to do its thing, while these 2 guys eyed me up and down. I was allowed a quick 5-minute cold shower before I was escorted to an exam room. A nurse made notations and asked questions about all my tattoos and scars. She didn't believe half of what I told her and obviously wrote that in her notes. Heading on to the unit was interesting. I wasn't allowed out of my room for 2 days before until I was done with the intake process. Still, other kids there found ways to communicate with me despite a staff member sticking their head in our rooms every 5-10 minutes. Once I was out onto the unit, I met kids from all over the US that came from many different traumatic backgrounds and fucked up experiences from other facilities. I heard about the wilderness programs in the South quite a bit. Most of the kids were like me, depressed drug users that went through some things in life and didn't handle it well. Some were victims of sexual abuse, etc. Onto the horror stories. A 12-year-old patient was brought in and shared a room with a 18-year-old guy who was truly weird. He was in there for trying to kill his father with a hammer, and he had an obsession with black metal and drawing musicians in paint, battle armor, etc. I woke up to screaming one night and heard the staff members struggling with someone. Both those patients were gone the next day. Turned out the black metal guy beat the younger kid and was raping him. Next one. Meds were big in this place, especially antipsychotics. We didn't have a choice in what we took and were forced to get our meds from a nurse ratchet type at 7:30 am, then sit in the day room after until breakfast. A good chunk of us were on Seroquel due to having a history of aggressive behavior. A picture I still have clear in my head is that group of kids, including myself, sitting in the day room drooling on ourselves and being screamed at by staff for dozing off while waiting. After a tough couple of days, when I found out I was going to be stuck there for a year and possibly move across the street to another Mormon facility, I woke up in a foul mood and reacted to a staff member telling me to wake up. I sucker punched him and was promptly restrained and dragged to an isolation room. This isolation room was completely tiled and big enough for them to drag my mattress in. There were paper signs on the wall with Mormon inspirational texts and only one fluorescent light. I was upped on my meds to be heavily sedated and left in this room for 3 days with a staff member sitting in a chair watching me 24/7. I got out to smiles from the other patients who had been in the same place in the past. Final story, a girl was admitted who was from an area close to where I lived. Some group therapy sessions included both male and females, and sometimes they mixed us in one of the day rooms just to remind us the other sex existed. We got to talking and started bonding as friends. Every time we were mixed together we chatted about food back home, the accents, the beaches, Boston, etc. One day we were chatting and she was pulled out of the day room by her doctor for a phone call with the family. I didn't see her again after because it wasn't good. That night she stuffed her bed with things to make it seem like she was sleeping. She wedged a chair somehow in her room so it wouldn't flip, sat down on the ground and put a sheet around the top and around her neck and hoisted herself up to cut off airflow to her head. She managed to cut her wrists too, and that was it. We never heard any yelling like some of the other incidents or any word. She just wasn't in the facility anymore. I was told by my doctor, who knew I was friends with her, that she had killed herself. A girl who was friends with her on the unit explained to me how, though IDK how much I believe her, compulsive lying was prevalent in that place. There's many other stories like people on my unit making alcohol, cheating meds and overdosing, etc. But those 3 stand out. IDK where everyone is, never stayed in contact really. One girl I gave my phone number to hidden in a book. Her father lived not far from me and I told her to hit me up if she moved in with him. She was actually in there for smuggling axes across the Tijuana border in her snatch apparently. She and I got along. She hit me up a year later telling me she was living in my area and I helped her get some heroin. She hung around for a while then moved. Never heard from her again. This was long-winded, but it feels good to talk about. The experiences at these facilities did not help me and if anything made my life worse and more complicated. The mental health system for youths is a joke. I ran away from home a lot when I was young. Eventually my parents sent me to this super religious detention home in Louisiana. Here go that place. https://battle4times.com/2013/03/21/ The New Bethany Home for Boys news articles from 1984/ The first day there, I was stripped to my underwear and t-shirt and locked in a closet. I had a coffee can with some pine oil in it to piss in, and a mattress on the floor with one blanket and no pillow. The light switch was outside the closet, so I had no control over the light, day or night. The door had holes drilled into it about head high, and they hung a tape recorder on the door from the outside that played nothing but hellfire and brimstone preachers and church services 8 hours a day. I was allowed out twice a day to poop and once every other day to shower, but that was it for the first 3 weeks. When I finally got put into the general population, I made it about a week before I managed to run away, but they caught me in Dallas and sent me right back. I was locked in the closet again for another 2 weeks, but then shortly after that the state came in and shut the whole place down for abuse and neglect. It was utter and complete hell. Beatings and Jesus, 24/7. I can't even begin to describe the conditions or the stereotypical low IQ deep south morons running the place. I've been told I should write a book about my experiences there, but fuck it. What's done is done and most of those people are dead now anyway. Good riddance, says I. Thanks for watching. Check the link in the description to support the channel through affiliate links. Have a good one, lad.